see what happens as folks join. Thank you, Mark. All right, so real quick, since we just started recording, today's October 5th, 2022. This is the meeting of Consortium of Cities in Boulder County. My name is Martha Lochman, Boulder County Commissioner. Thank you everybody for being here this evening. Appreciate it. Appreciate our staff support that gets us, does all that background work to get us together. So I want to do introductions, and again, feel free to use the chat to put your name, contact information. You might hear something this evening in presentations, and that's a great way for you to connect and make sure that we're sharing resources around the region. So I'm going to start with Mark and then Trustee Harrison.
Good evening, everyone. Mark Rosen, Boulder County Commissioner's Office staff, and look forward to hearing tonight's presentations and the conversation ahead. Thank you.
Thanks again for your work, Mark.
Absolutely.
And thank you again, Mark, for all the work you do put in. I'm Ari Harrison. I'm trustee here in Erie.
Thanks for joining us. And then we've got, let's see here, and if I mess up your title, please forgive me. The Town Board Member Farrell, is that correct? Or is it Trustee?
And Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah.
All right, no, I really did mess it. Mayor Pro Tem Farrell, and then Collins with us, and then Grace.
Yeah, I'm with Lions.
Thank you. And then Colin.
Oops, I guess I was muted.
Oh, okay.
I'm Colin Tom. I'm the Climate and Health Strategist at the Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience here at Boulder County.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Grace Hood. I am Climate Action Coordinator at Boulder County Public Health.
Thanks for being here. And then we'll go to Councilmember Folkerts, Schaaf, and Coombs.
Thank you, Marta. I'm Councilmember Lauren Folkerts with the City of Boulder.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm Councilmember Devin Schaaf with City and County of Broomfield.
Great to see you, Devin.
I'm Eric Coombs-Ismail. I'm a trustee for Nederland.
It's good to see you again, Eric. It's been a little while. Appreciate your work, Trustee. And then we'll go to Taylor, Tina, and Megan.
Evening, Taylor Ryman, City Council Administrator, City of Boulder.
Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Tina Nielsen. I'm with Boulder County Parks and Open Space. I'll be talking to you on your second agenda item this evening.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Davis, Deputy City Manager, City of Lewisville. It's nice to see everybody, and I don't believe that Councilmember Kyle Brown's going to be able to make it tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we appreciate Lewisville representation. And then we'll go to Kristen and then Councilmember Martin. And Kristen, you could jump in later and do an intro if you'd like. We'll have another opportunity to do introductions if it's not a good time.
Hi, Marta, it's me.
Oh,
it's Jeff Moline. I'm having to substitute and use my wife's iPad tonight. And I'll be presenting with Tina.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep. Sorry, Marta.
No, that's okay.
Hi, this is Marcia Martin. I am the Longmont City Council member for Ward 2.
Thanks for joining us. Great, and it looks like Brett just joined, so we'll give just a second. We're just doing introductions with name and who you're representing this evening, Brett.
Good morning, everyone. Or good morning. Yeah, I'm already tomorrow. Good evening. Brett Kincairn, City of Boulder, Climate Initiatives Team.
Great, thanks for joining us. All right, well, I appreciate that, and we'll get going. I'm going to ask Mark if you don't mind throwing the agenda in for us, and just a reminder regarding Consortium of Cities. This is Boulder County cities, towns represented as well, and including Broomfield. We come together every other month to talk about different issues that members vote on and put together an agenda for the full year. And we also have some annual reports that come to us, and we're going to hear one of those this evening. So some great work, some great collaboration, some really exciting information and idea share has happened with this group over the years. And I've had the pleasure of leading this group for the last 2 years. And this is one of my favorite meetings. Certainly my favorite evening meeting, I should say that. So I appreciate y'all. We do try and take a break about an hour in just for planning purposes. And we try and be done, if not early, by the end of our time this evening. So thanks for throwing that agenda in there. One of the topics that was chosen then for 2022 was climate resiliency. And we know that that might look different for everybody. And so we really also want to give folks an opportunity to look at it from where your town is, where your city is, and be able to share that information. So we're going to start with those presentations first, and then we have some other business that we're going to go into. We have some time on the agenda just for an update and the kind of subcommittee task force that's working on the regional local wage. And so we'd love to have an update if folks feel like they've got some information to share this evening. We want to talk about your updates, any events that are happening, et cetera. And also we do want to talk about if we meet in person in December. So that's the plan for this evening. We're going to go into our meeting topic. And what I just want to remind everybody, presentations, you have like 5 to 7 minutes each, and we want to open it up for questions. So just, I'm not there to do the nudge or give you any kind of signal. So if you can just kind of keep track of your own time, that would be great, so that we make sure that we have enough time for all the presenters and also the other business that's on our agenda. So with that, we have presentations that we know about from Boulder County, Boulder, Longmont, Lewisville, and Erie. And then I've got some talking points that Ken Lachik had sent over from from Jamestown, because he may not be able to join us while we're still doing our presentation. So I'll share that out if he's not able to present himself. So why don't we start with Boulder County first, and we'll go through that order. So Boulder County, Boulder, Longmont, just so you can hear where you are on the list, Lewisville, and then Erie.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Lochamin. I'm Colin Tom. I'll be presenting with Grace Hood from Boulder County Public Health. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Excellent. I had a problem with that earlier. Okay, so I'm starting my stopwatch and sharing my screen.
Thanks for that, Colin.
Let me know when you can see my slideshow.
It's coming up. There we go.
Nice. Okay, so we wanted to share a tool that we have that is just about ready for prime time, and also some visions as to what we'd like to do with it, and you know, as far as an emerging topic that we all feel every summer. So I'm going to go ahead and move to, if it will allow me. Oh, wow, okay. How do I change slides? When? There we go. The slide change? Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we engaged Resiliency Analytics, Boulder County did, in order to use their expertise. They are connected with CU as well as an independent firm, specializing in all different types of mapping, and also they're very plugged into climate science and climate metrics. So what they have done for us is throughout Boulder County to compare existing physical conditions and existing social conditions derived from the social conditions derived from the census, and the existing conditions being existing physical conditions, including tree cover, and combining that with climate projections. So this would be 2 different climate scenarios at 2 different kind of probabilities for both 2030 and 2050. And they combine those and score into a scoring system that allows to measure the county in terms of adaptive capacity. And we have the ability then to actually filter some of the other conditions, such as demographic conditions, against the adaptive capacity of various areas of the county. The level of this tool is at the census block group level. So, you know, the finest level is generally census block. Census block group is statistically more significant, and it captures more of the data on a single level of granularity. And it's much more useful to us than, for example, census tract data, which is very, very large, or county level data, which we wouldn't be talking about this today. So let me show you what it looks like inside. So if you go straight to the adaptive capacity, you notice that it's scored such that higher scores are higher adaptive capacity, and lower scores, lower adaptive capacity in terms, and these do combine. It's responsive to heat and to various risks, including fire, and it also combines with equity-based factors derived from the census, from demographics, in terms of the level of risk that a population has, combined with what risks they are exposed to physically through climate change at both 2030 and 2050. And you can see some of the details if you select a plot, and you can scroll through all the details. And then in response to what Grace is going to talk about, we did a special filter on heat. And there's a section of the tool that is specifically focused on heat, because we are noticing that our heat waves are getting longer, and any high heat days together over about 3 days, we are starting to get really concerned about folks' ability to adapt and to be healthy, especially without air conditioning. So I'm going to then turn it over to Grace to talk about the resilience and equity angles on heat.
Sounds good. Thanks, Colin. You can head to the next slide. So there's a couple of different ways that equity is folded into Boulder County's climate resilience work. I'm going to be talking about what that looks like at Boulder County Public Health, which is where I work. I can head to the next slide. So this year, Boulder County Public Health launched its first ever extreme heat emergency plan. And this summer, we really focused our messaging on those that we believe to be most at risk. So we're talking about adults over the age of 65, outdoor workers, outdoor athletes, kids. But we also focused messaging during heat emergencies this summer on individuals living in manufactured home communities and folks living in homelessness or experiencing homelessness. Get to the next slide, Colin. So what we focused on this summer, you can see components of our communications toolkit that we created. So we have a website or web page that we created in English and Spanish. We've got a PDF in English and Spanish, and that was actually pretty critical because this was something that we handed out via Meals on Wheels. Think about one of the most important audiences that we wanted to reach on extreme heat. Those most affected are older adults, and some are online, but others aren't. So that's why this distribution of printed flyers was pretty critical. And we distributed thousands of flyers through Meals on Wheels. Social media, we were working with in both English and Spanish. So what's coming up for 2023 is really moving more into the, focusing a little bit more on cooling options for our most vulnerable community members next summer. If you could head to the next slide. The other thing I wanted to flag for you all is that really building off the success of our extreme heat plan, Boulder County Public Health is going to be working with all divisions and departments next year and really trying to look at strengths and weaknesses through a climate change lens. Really, the idea is that this is going to help public health become more resilient in the future. But also really kind of, I think, bring to the front of mind for everybody, what are the concerns? Where do we need funding so that we can proactively pursue funding opportunities? And, I think front of mind for so many of us is the Inflation Reduction Act. This is kind of a once in a great while opportunity to really use funding to put climate resilient strategies in place. So back to you, Colin.
Thanks, Grace. And yeah, that is we're ending on the money and asking for folks to reach out, and we will reach back, and we will reach out around potential collaborations on funding for resiliency oriented work. And so, for example, you know, as heat becomes more of a concern, we're going and becomes more of a health concern, really, we're going to be looking for ways to improve the habitability of housing for equity. And, you know, the IRA provides some potential opportunities for that. And so we're asking you all to send us your ideas and let us know what concerns you specifically have, because our applications for funding are going to be much stronger in coalition. And, you know, regional solutions are really the best solutions around public health and the most efficient and effective. So with that, we'll see if there are questions.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Grace. We talk about this a lot in the consortium, that as electeds, we are on all the time, but our staff doesn't have to be, and yet you all are here and you're sharing your information, and we really appreciate it. So I would encourage you to, and I'm not looking at the chat right now, I would encourage you to put in your contact information. If there's handles that folks can look at and or share out, or even just cut and paste to use in their own work, I'm sure that that would be appreciated as well. So feel free to do that. So are there any questions for our first presenters? I'm changing my view here to see if I'm missing any hands up. And if not, you can just come off of the mic. Oh, thanks. Maybe that was it, just the share. Any questions? And there's a question, I think maybe for the next presenters for you, maybe Mark, in regards to screen share. Great. Well, I would encourage you, as we start doing some of our other presentations, it might start another question back to the first presentation, et cetera. So, and Colin and Grace, if you can stay, you're welcome. And if you need to go and do life and everything else, you're welcome to too. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. And I should mention, stay tuned, because this tool will be available to you, the mapping tool.
Great. Do you have an ETA, or just kind of a hopeful ETA maybe?
Roughly around the end of the year.
Okay.
Got it. We got a little bit more to do. There will be a public facing story map, and but for municipalities and subject matter experts, there's the tool, the whole tool. So that's our ETA.
Great. And that might answer Trustee Coombs' question. Can you remind us who Boulder County worked with for this tool creation that you shared?
Surely, Resilient Analytics. I'll put them in the chat.
Great. All right. Good. All right. Well, thank you both. And we'll move to the next presentation, which will be Boulder. And then after Boulder is Longmont, and then Lewisville.
Hey, everybody. Does the presentation come up? You see? Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Well, it's really delightful to actually follow our good friends and colleagues from the county staff, because we're going to be talking about very, very similar things. And in fact, how Boulder is building off the great work that the county has done. And I'm just going to sort of reinforce some of the things that Colin and Grace were saying. This is a piece that I used for a number of years before I could really persuade people about how serious climate change was going to be. This is a report that came out in 2019 from the Union of Concerned Scientists. And I just think that this encapsulation, which comes out of the executive summary, is really, frankly, a pretty blunt reminder of what's coming. That right now there are only 3 areas in the United States that typically experience more than 30 days over 105 degrees. Those 3 places are all in deserts. And what this climate projections are asserting is that we would be seeing something like 1/3 of all of our communities over 50,000 in size experiencing that kind of heat during the summer by mid-century. So clearly we have some things to prepare ourselves for. So let's see if I can get, so Boulder has launched an initiative this year, just this year, that's called Cool Boulder. So it's our first natural climate solutions based climate action effort. Like the county, the city has formed a natural climate solutions team that sits with our energy teams and our circular economy teams. So we are recognizing that we need a robust and fully sort of diverse approach to the addressing of climate change. One of the things I think it's important to note is that this is not a city organization centered campaign. It's a community centered campaign, because we're really trying to imbue our community with the understanding that the only way that we actually prepare ourselves for what's coming is by working together as an entire community. I'm not going to go through the whole Cool Boulder campaign tonight. I would just say that there are 3 living system areas that we're focusing extensively in: connected canopy, which of course is urban forests, pollinator pathways and cool corridors, how we create these biologically rich and cooling corridors through our community, and absorbent landscapes. Absorbent in this case, not just being carbon, but also water and heat, because these heat dynamics, these carbon and water cycling dynamics are going to be critical to how we maintain natural cooling in our communities. Tonight, I'm just going to emphasize some of the work that we're doing around heat, and note a campaign that we participated in this summer that was through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, in which is about, I think it's the 5th year that they've run this, where they support a series of communities to do a volunteer-based heat mapping initiative. So they help you try to find the one single hottest day of your summer, which was a bit hair-raising to, you're 2 weeks ahead trying to find that right date. Then you mobilize all these people on that day. So we mobilized, I think, 70 people on that day. And in fact, we actually hit it very nicely. It was a day that did top over 100, and got a whole bunch of people literally out on the street running these transects with cars, with strollers, with bicycles, with walks, and gathering all this heat data. And I'll show you some of that data here in just a second. In fact, well, here's one of the, so we ran that, you run the folks out 3 different times in that day: 6 to 7 a.m., 2 to 3 p.m., and then 6 to 7 p.m. And our recordings, our temperature recordings of that day showed some of the most extreme temperature variations of any communities across the country. And in fact, in our morning run, we had a 17-degree difference between the coolest areas and the hottest areas. So we're starting to work on developing tools and systems with which we can understand these dynamics and plan around how to manage them. So one of those tools that we're working with is the very one that Colin and Grace just talked about with you. And so I didn't realize they were going to show those slides. So you saw better slides from them than I'm going to show you tonight. But it's a really awesome tool that looks at this from a county perspective, which is super helpful, and it is providing that baseline information for all of the county's communities. But we need to actually now, as we move towards trying to develop management plans around this, understand how these dynamics play out, even more at the neighborhood level. So this is just a slide to illustrate that you can see very significant heat variations across the different neighborhoods. This is Boulder's heat map in a sense. And you can see that spot downtown is about 8 degrees on average above the mean temperature for the rest of the community. So we're now working with Resilient Analytics to start looking at taking that county scale tool, and we're going to downscale it to essentially neighborhood analysis to see if we can build this kind of resilience capacity assessment down to that neighborhood level. So because Boulder has fairly abundant resources compared to other communities, we're going to try to take on some of that initial development obligation, sort of like the county did with the first step. We're going to take that next step. We're going to invest another $40,000 or $50,000 to see what it takes to do that at the community scale, and see if we can create an economy of scale around this, so that if it's a very useful tool, it could be something that could be built out less expensively for other communities, both in our county and elsewhere. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about one of the strategies around managing heat, which is urban forestry. There was a lot of analysis that came out just over the last couple of years about urban forests as heat management strategies. This is a piece from the New York Times summer before this past one. There's a lot of evidence that's showing that urban forests and vegetation more broadly can have a big difference, can be as much as a 10 to 20 degree difference between places that don't have that vegetation. So we're taking that heat modeling that we're doing, we're also doing forest modeling, and then we're doing equity mapping to see where are the vulnerabilities, where are the heat anomalies, and where are the opportunities for adding that green infrastructure in ways that can reduce those temperatures. We are also going to, so we have that contract with Paul and Resilient Analytics. We're also contracting with a group of really amazing folks out of Georgia Tech. They're called the Urban Climate Lab. And they've been leaders in urban heat modeling for a long time. Most of that work originally depended on supercomputers. It was very computationally intensive. But because of their experience and their way of understanding and knowing which of these details were necessary, they've been able to sort of synthesize and condense what's needed to make these maps. And they're gonna develop a heat map for Boulder that we're gonna then try to use to help guide our heat management policies. One of the things that they can do, which is really interesting, is not simply map where the heat anomalies are, but they can then help us develop scenarios of intervention that also include an analysis of where we have things like lack of access to air conditioning, and also, depending on what level of health data we have, where we have the highest incidences of heat, morbidity, and mortality. And with that, we can then start to figure out where we really need to target our interventions. So I just want to note that this is work that we're doing both locally, and then we're also looking at how we implement, as Grace and Colin said, we have this very historic opportunity to access resources, and we're working on that urban forestry piece at a regional level. Some of us worked actually on the national advocacy that got $1.5 billion put into the IRA for urban forestry. In fact, some of us are presenting in front of the National Forest Service's Urban and Community Forestry leader on Friday, and we're making the case that they should be investing significantly, because what we did in anticipation, hopefully, of succeeding on that funding scale was that last summer we worked with about 30 organizations to build a regional urban forestry expansion strategy, and we're now going to be presenting that with the hopes that we can bring resources not just to Boulder but to the communities across the Front Range. So I'm just going to close by saying, again, bring it back to kind of where we are in our community. We're trying to approach this entire thing as a community campaign. And for example, this is a good illustration is in urban forestry. The city only controls about 20% of the urban forest. So the only way that we're going to actually implement green infrastructure changes is if we bring along the commercial sector, the residential sector, and other sectors. And that's why through Cool Boulder, we're signing up a whole bunch of organizations and folks across the community to help us move that out as a community. So I'll end there. Happy to answer questions, and delighted to actually have this chance to be here tonight. So let me just see, how do I get it? There we are. Okay.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate that information. Do folks have questions? Go ahead, Trustee Harrison.
Thank you, and Brett, a very good presentation, and the others as well. In regard to going out to communities after you get your data in terms of trying to figure out how to do that intervention, with the IRA that is there and for the rebates, and I know that they're really targeted for those middle to lower incomes to be able to refurbish their appliances, et cetera, all that sort of stuff. So is that going to be a component of that intervention with the IRA to let them know, hey, this is what's available? Are you just going to say, hey, here it is, or really try to convince them, hey, this is what we can do for you? Or maybe those are apartment owners that have those apartments for those type of income levels, going in and talking to them. Are you going to have that as part of your intervention strategy?
Yeah, thanks. So I did really focus on the sort of green infrastructure side, but one of the things that the city and county staffs are talking with one another about is the potential opportunity to run significant campaigns on both the green infrastructure and the sort of built infrastructure side. So how do we increase both cooling through natural, like shading, but also access to high efficiency heat pumps and so on? I think there's an enormous opportunity with the resources that are in the IRA to look at that infrastructure upgrade on the built side as well. And I think pairing those is where the real big impact can happen.
Yeah, I think the big thing is for that length of how long that's available is whether or not towns like Erie and others may be able to try to bake that into our ordinances for new build.
Yeah.
And whether that's something that's possible to do, whether those builders would be receptive to that, I think they would be. But that way we don't have to continue putting fossil fuel, water heaters, et cetera, into new homes as they're being built.
Yeah, just I would say one thing we've been talking a lot about is that, you know, we ran a residential heat pump adoption campaign in 2016-17. And it was a real learning experience for us. And I think one of the things we learned was you have significant barriers even to be sort of electrification ready. Like if your panel, if you have a 100 amp panel, like my house, a 61 tract house, I don't have the right electrical infrastructure to be electrified yet. And that's a $4,000 to $8,000 investment before you even get a chance to put in that sort of, you know, whatever, induction cooktop. Or so I think that there are these stages. And I think one of the things we need to be looking at is not just federal money, but how we push utilities to actually lead the electrification process by, say, getting electric ready. They should be rate basing the sort of electric ready infrastructure upgrades, and then put the easy ones in. Put the electric heat pump hot water heaters in first, which maybe you let them do a demand response on it so they get a penny out of that too. And then we get that basic infrastructure in place that we can build on.
Yeah, I know in the IRA that there is money set aside for wiring, bringing electricians in, upgrading their panel to be able to reflect the amperage that they'll need, especially with electric chargers and vehicles coming into play as well. Putting that in, there is money, and I think based on what I've read, that pretty much covers almost 80% of what those charges would be. So it's a big saver.
Yeah, and imagine the equity opportunity. I'm sorry, Colin, I will stop after I say this. Imagine the equity implications of this in terms of if we built the workforce development pieces intentionally around making sure we have that access to opportunity across all of our community. But in Boulder alone, there's 20,000 single family residences that need that sort of electric ready upgrade. So the level of work and workforce that we could grow is literally in the tens to hundreds of thousands if we actually did this seriously. But this is not something that one community can do by itself. We have to approach this, even not just as a county, but really as a Excel service territory, get the PUC to compel utilities to lead this work. And if we did, the economic benefits would be enormous.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
And I have just a quick follow on that that actually answers one of your questions, which is when it comes to building this into the ordinances, Erie's actually going great guns on that because I believe you're going for the first reading of your code package in December. That's 2021 IECC, yes. Solar ready, EV ready, electric preferred, and energy efficiency with a bunch of provisions. So so yeah, it's and those would very much that would set up the kind of package of regulation and assistance, regulation and incentives, stick and carrot sort of thing that really is how things get done.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler's done a good job of trying to put that together for our program. And I think the other thing that was mentioned earlier by Brett as well, we also have to look at this as an economic driver. And so by putting in new technology, upgrading, so forth, you're going to need electricians, you might need plumbers, you might need all that. And then and so I know that there may be a dearth of that right now. So we have to also look at that workforce training perspective of trying to bring those folks who might be interested in something like that, seeing a market for it, how much they can make is sustainable over time, and what they're doing is good for the environment. I think that positivity there, you might be able to recruit more people to become electricians, plumbers, et cetera. And that will also help. We're trying to look at, and I think we probably all are, trying to how we get our people who work in our cities and towns to be able to live in our cities and towns. And so I think it's an economic driver that we have to focus on as well as a byproduct of it. And I think that will help get a lot of other people involved and sign up for something like that. That's at least my hope. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And just flagging, we did an informational interview with King County over the summer. As you know, Seattle had a huge heat wave. They're doing a heat pump pilot now, which provides both, heat and air conditioning. But they very much are trying to bake in that workforce readiness component into their plan, which is just getting underway now. So there's some models out there to look at as we think about those things.
And the Colorado Energy Office will address a lot of that contractor training and kind of does even now.
The one thing I would just offer as a bit of a caution based on our experience in Boulder running that campaign is that we don't have perfect drop-in retrofit solutions for houses yet. And that, you know, one of my colleagues the other day was trying to get a quote for his, you know, not particularly big house, 2,000, 2,500 square foot house. And the contractor, he was saying, I want to switch over from natural gas. And the contractor said, well, we can do that if you really want to do it. It's probably going to be $30,000 for you. So, you know, there are good solutions in certain situations. And I think we should, and we have the experience to probably be able to stage this, but I just want to make sure that we know that we're not fully ready on the technology side to fit all solutions.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. That was a good reminder there at the end too. As hopeful as we are and as much we want to get done, there's still the realities of where we are. Any other questions for this group? All right. Thank you. We'll go next to Longmont and then Lewisville will follow.
Thanks, everybody. Let me share my screen. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, I can see it. It's not on the slideshow.
No, I am doing that next.
Okay.
How now?
There we go.
Okay. So I have to say I was remiss in not finding out the name of our consultant. We are also working on a mapping tool for the urban ecosystem and climate risk and vulnerability. You know, here are some pictures of our tool, which may have the same foundations because we're right now in the stage of data load, so that, you know, the framework appears to be complete, but I can't see it yet. You know, we're working on it, you know, we have a lot of different scores in terms of climate equity, the tree canopy, different social metrics for that taken together allow us to identify regions by neighborhood where persons are more or less at risk during a heat wave or other climate event, because what we're really focusing on is not only managing the urban environment, but also managing fire risk and managing water resources, as well as the beneficial building electrification process. Longmont has something of an advantage there because we have our own utility, electric utility, and Excel does not appear to be heavily invested in putting new gas lines in. So they are subsidizing our aspects of our building electrification efforts, as well as the PRPA generation utility. So this is, I'm not going to spend time on this slide because there's not enough time, and I forgot to start my timer. Now I have started it. So we're doing a lot of different data loads to describe our urban environment. And then at the same time as we're doing that, we're incorporating known resiliency factors into things like our park designs. So, you know, less bluegrass turf, more quick shade things, also things like hardened restrooms, more water sources, a lot of different things that will make the parks be a refuge for people and also a refuge for pollinators, using less water and providing resources for wildlife from the insects up, and decrease water use, as well as making more areas accessible to people. This is a turf maintenance project. We recognize that some parks, people have certain expectations about how they look, and we're not going to be able to make them very xeric without a lot of public upset. So we're looking at other things to make the parks more sustainable, such as, using compost tea to make them more water sparing, transitioning as much of the turf grass from bluegrass to other kinds of turf grass, and moving away from pesticides by using more resistant strains. So this is what we hope Roosevelt Park will look like when we've done all of this stuff. It doesn't look this good now, so I have not got the transition. I'm sure everyone is familiar with Resource Central and the Garden in a Box program. We have just this year started funding, in addition to Garden in a Box, the turf removal or turf inversion programs, and they're going to be there in next year's budget. They're funded a lot more. So we're working on reducing water consumption and also improving environmental conditions for pollinators and other wildlife. This is the water management portion. So we've got water protection, forest health, and wildfire risk reduction. All that happens at Button Rock Preserve, which is Longmont's primary water source, and it's on an east slope basin. So that makes us very happy. It's a good high quality water source, but we have lost a lot of the forest there to fire in recent years, and so we're working very hard on recovering that and restoring our forest health. I'm not going to stop and talk about the different projects that we're working on, because I would rather talk a little bit more about our electrification process and how which is ready to be presented to council. I expect to see it the end of this month, except the timeline is still up in the air because of the changes wrought by the passage of the IRA. So what we already knew was that we were going to focus on building envelope first, because you don't want to install heat pumps in a porous, leaky building. So we'll try not to do that, especially on the situations where it has to be subsidized. We are not quite as far ahead as Erie in terms of the code updates, but we do have a timeline for that. We're bickering a little bit about when the new building requirements have to be all electric, but other than that, we have got the timeline of code updates going. And we also have the plan out there for our workforce development program, so that by the time we are ready to start really pushing the replacement of appliances with heat exchange type appliances, we will have the workforce that's ready for it. And we will also have an appropriately upgraded older neighborhoods, so that we will be able to upgrade homes that don't have 200 amp service to the house. I just had a request for 400 amp service to a house, which is a little bit scary, but you know, for most houses, 200 amp service is enough. But we do know that we have neighborhoods where not only do we not have that, we don't have the underground structure to provide it to every home. So all of those things are working in parallel. I'm very happy that we'll have the mapping tool available that will allow us to assess the neighborhoods that need to be focused on in any by prioritizing both development and redevelopment. And that's all I've got. And my 7 minutes are just now up. So thank you. And I'm happy to stop sharing and answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions for Longmont? My one question from the Nino Gallo Park question was if there's going to be pickleball.
There are 6 pickleball courts at Nino Gallo, which makes me believe that it used to be a tennis court and they changed it at the last minute.
It kind of looked like it, but the diagram was small, so I just had to ask you. Since I've got you right here and you just showed the diagram. So.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, although I will be happy not to hear about the lack of pickleball courts, I'm much happier about the pollinator gardens and the moving away from pesticides personally.
Yes, I was just going to say back to climate resiliency.
Yes.
And the outdoors and keeping folks outside doing other activities is always important.
Right.
Any questions related to the climate resiliency part? All right.
I do want to say that we'll make our timeline available as soon as it's finalized, because we're very close to be able to matching our workforce development goals with our rebate and tax credit setup, so that we can inform people when they should plan their upgrades.
Great. Thank you. All right, well, let's move to our next presentation, which is Lewisville. And then after Lewisville will be Erie.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Thanks, everybody. I don't have a presentation, so I don't think I'll go the full 5 minutes, but I just wanted to share a couple things that are going on in Lewisville and some of the issues that we're working through and kind of some of the challenges. And I kind of just followed some of the guiding questions that Mark sent out. So, you know, I think obviously sort of our immediate climate resiliency challenge that we're working through is the Marshall Fire recovery. And so since we're starting to sort of transition into the long-term recovery phase, a really big focus of that work is around kind of climate resiliency and how we can both rebuild back more resilient, but also put in place a better you know, data plans, programs, information, education around what some of the potential, you know, impacts might be in our small communities. So we have historically been really focused on flood and hail and drought, and more recently, obviously, on wildfire and heat. And we don't have the climate resiliency risk mapping tool that we've seen tonight. And so I really appreciate seeing that, what really appears to be a fantastic resource for starting to identify and being able to layer some of these potential impacts to communities and where we might see the greatest areas of threats. So I would love to reach out to some folks and just learn a little bit more about how you went through that process. It would be really helpful to us. So in terms of kind of areas that we're again, it's specifically focused on, you know, we have a lot of information and data around drought and drought response because of our water utility services that we provide to the community, and have a lot of, you know, kind of predictive models that we are using and indicators that we are looking at around drought. We are currently have an RFP out to do a wildfire risk assessment for all city-owned properties. And so we have had something similar previously, some wildfire mitigation recommendations for open space, but we're looking comprehensively at all, you know, city properties to get a really a better sense of what and where the potential risks are and what some mitigation strategies are. And we're working jointly with Superior on that effort so that we can look kind of continuously at some of the lands that run adjacent to our small, you know, small communities. And we also have had the communication and coordination with Boulder County, and look forward to the CWPP process, because we don't have a community wildfire protection plan. And that's going to be, I think, just a critical tool for Eastern Boulder County and Southeastern Boulder County to take a fresh look and a new look at what the potential impacts of wildfire might be in our Eastern communities, you know, related to grassland fires, and also just the suburban kind of community type that we have. And it's just been a little different when we look at resilient rebuilding to be able to try to apply things like FireWise, which are typically focused on more rural environments, to homes that are so close together. And so these are things that we're kind of trying to work through right now, again, as we go through recovery. I guess I would just say a couple other things. We are really, I think the heat example that we've seen from Boulder County and that Boulder County Public Health has taken leadership on is something that's really useful to smaller communities like Lewisville, because we really would not have been doing any planning around that, and yet we do have some, you know, resources in the community that can be mobilized. And so it's been great to be connected and link in to those resources and that planning that's been happening. So I think that's a really good example as I start to think about what kinds of support's most helpful to Lewisville as we address some of the ongoing climate resiliency threats, is really that coordination across the county and engaging the smaller communities in, you know, everything from planning and education and outreach to infrastructure and systems, and identifying opportunities for common and consistent approaches and complementary kind of infrastructure and systems that we can all start to look at, that we should be thinking about, that we may not, you know, that we may not already be kind of planning for. And I guess some other examples are that because we have a water utility and water infrastructure, we're working with some of the other jurisdictions to have access to water and additional cisterns when there are wildfires in areas outside their jurisdiction. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for mutual benefit around stronger and greater resiliency at both the municipal level and also broader kind of county level. So yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. Those are just some of the thoughts that I have had, and that some of the things that we've identified as we're kind of working through our resiliency planning and our recovery.
Thank you, Megan. Are there any questions?
Oh, I'll just say one more thing about, sorry, Commissioner. I did want to mention that from, you know, a policy perspective, we have taken some actions around with our energy efficiency building code. We did pass, I'm sure everybody has read all about it, before the Marshall Fire occurred, the residential energy efficiency building code to the 2021 IECC with the net zero appendix. And then when the fire happened, I mean, it was a really interesting, I think, experience and case of, you know, what homeowners are going through, the underinsurance experience that people are having, and the inability to piece together even the, you know, the financial ability to rebuild at all, and then to also look at these really important resiliency policies that we put in place intentionally for reasons exactly like this, but then to face the realities of what that means for people when they're rebuilding. I know there was a really good story on NPR the other day about being able to rebuild a resilient home at a cost level that's accessible to people. So that kind of information I think is going to be really important to communities who are now going through their energy efficiency building codes, to have that data that we kind of were trying to piece together as we move forward. We did tie our use tax credit, which we're giving a credit back of the use tax to people when they're rebuilding, to our energy efficiency building code, and people get a larger credit if they're building to the 2021 IECC. So just trying to create as many incentives as we can, while recognizing also the hardship that has been, the financial hardship that's been created for so many residents. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Lewisville? Well, we recognize and acknowledge that you're in a different state of the work that you're doing, and so just appreciate sharing. And for a lot of us, that's an update too on what's happening for your city in regards to Marshall Fire as well, and how it's connected to the same conversation. So thanks for that, Megan. All right, let's see. Her next presenter is Erie. Looks good. You're still on mute.
There you go. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to get this back over where I need to.
Looks good.
Okay. All right. So the answers that I received from my staff was, or from the staff in Erie, was more narrative of form. So I tried to put this into a PowerPoint presentation that makes sense. So I apologize for the low tech on this. It's not flashy, so please work with me on that. So we just basically went off with the questions, kind of like Megan talked about in her previous presentation as well. What are those biggest threats emerging from climate change facing our community? So the responses that we have obviously are what everybody has: is severe heat, wildfires, possible tornadoes. We've had wind shears that have come through Erie a number of years ago that took out a couple of half of partial homes that even in my community where I used to live in Erie, and before we moved to another part of Erie. So those do occasionally happen. Hail, wind, and erratic changes that obviously kill the urban forest. And the data is from, we had some other things that came from graph here, but I didn't have a chance to put it in here. So what areas of segments of your community will be threatened disproportionately? So what are those? Post-disaster displacement, lack of access to help, promoting services such as efficient home HVAC systems, et cetera, were a concern that we highlighted. And on that, on number one, the lack of access to help promoting services, seeing continuous displacement through heightened rent home ownership costs is a big thing in Erie. We are undergoing affordable home housing effort right now, and we had a good discussion with our outside consultant in regard to that. And what we found, we were trying to achieve a 12% affordability rate by 2035 for all of the homes in Erie for our population. But what we found is the increased cost of that, people moving in, et cetera, is causing a lot of issues with that. So we're trying to look at how we maybe scale down to a more realistic approach year over year. Also, adverse health effects due to environmental pollution. Obviously, we just implemented in the last year an air quality monitoring system in Erie. And that's been going in the collaboration with the state, Colorado State University, and some assistance from CU side as well. So we have a number of monitoring stations all over Erie. As everybody knows, we're kind of ground zero for fracking and oil and gas. And so what we have found in as it relates to our budget, and I think it's been a very powerful sort of tool to bring to the table for folks to understand, is that part of our budget is only 1.4% of tax revenue that we receive from oil and gas, not as much as everybody else thinks it is. And so I think that's helped a lot in trying to move to more alternative sources, renewable energies. We're possibly looking at the possibility of maybe municipal solar. So we're engaging in that conversation in regard to that. That will help with our air quality issues that we have. Disproportionate life outcomes based on income due to inadequate access to healthcare and home features that may prevent environmental hazards that come up. This was provided by Alberto de los Rios, who's our DEI manager. And so based on a chart that we have here on the next slide, which people can't really see all that well, we're at 74.11 in CPHE's Climate Equity Data Viewer. The score is based on the disaggregated data, as you see, race, gender, et cetera here, overlapped with environmental factors such as proximity to sources of pollution and air quality. This shows that Old Town, where we are, is already experiencing environmental stressors in a different way than other neighborhoods that we have on outlying of Erie that are growing rapidly as well. And communities in the rest of the town, we may see worse health outcomes for those Old Town residents, both presently and over time. That's simply because of the age of those folks, as well as where they live and the older homes that they have. So that is a concern that we are trying to address. And so that is that. Sorry for repeat of that slide. So that kind of shows, this graph here shows kind of what that is. And what kinds of support would most help your community address these threats? I think before we get into that kind of support and identifying that, it's really before it's important to the communities lead and share their thoughts and concerns. So we're really about engagement. We recognize that, as everybody probably has heard, Erie is split down the middle between Weld County and Boulder County. There are significant opinions on both sides about how we should treat this. And so we really are trying to look at that engagement strategy and trying to get their feedback in regard to that, understanding that people will have very wildly different opinions on how they want to approach things. So that is something that Gabby Ray and our communications manager and others are trying to bring together and trying to do, obviously, surveys, engagement, reaching out to town events, having a booth here and there to try to get that information and provide that, working with an external survey company to be able to try to aggregate the data that we do get, that we send out via email, other different channels that we're trying to get that information. Once we get all that, we'll collate that in. The staff will take a look at it, and then they'll present it to us on the board and determine, here's the input that we received. This is where the community is on XYZ. Here are some strategies that we have in place that we would like to pursue based on this engagement. And we'll have those conversations and obviously vote and provide that vision and direction of where we go from a board perspective. Would you like to see Boulder County play a role in helping support, helping the town reach to underserved and disproportionately impacted communities through cultural brokers, work, expanding disaggregated data, increasing capacity for data gathering and community engagement is really what we're looking to Boulder County. We had a meeting, as Martha knows, earlier in this week. We're going to hopefully try to work with Boulder County more in terms of this area and trying to get some help in the data side and leverage some of the tools that they have available. Obviously, again, Erie is split into two different counties, but I think, Marta, if I remember correctly, that it would be accessible for all of Erie and not just the Boulder County side, but that's something specific that we got to take a look at. And again, feedback. Really, we're trying to involve DEI. We're trying to get that ramped up, what that means from an equity standpoint. So as I mentioned before, we as public servants cannot impose our activities on them. Which may not be culturally relevant or do not address distrust and trauma, especially from low income and BIPOC residents. We're starting to have more residents come into town that are more integration and so forth, which is great, especially on the BIPOC side. So we're sensitive to that. We understand that maybe one strategy that we may want to impose may sound innocent enough to be good. And the feedback we get is the opposite. So we're really trying to leave the DEI component into that and trying to weave that equity side into our strategies that we have for climate change. So that's kind of where we're at. Obviously, earlier we discussed that we're kind of in leading the charge on this. And what I'll do is after I stop this slide presentation, I'll provide the link to our sustainability plan. And so if anybody wants to take a look at that, feel free to go do so. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Great. Thank you, Trustee Harrison. Appreciate that information. Questions? I don't see any hands. We want to check the chat. All right. Thanks for sharing that sustainability plan as well there in the chat. Good. All right. Appreciate all the presentations. I did just want to share from Jamestown, I was just checking the participant list as well, that Ken Lenarchik had sent over just a few bullet points in regards to what's going on in Jamestown. And he was trying to meet us by 7:30, but clearly wasn't able to jump in, which is okay. So there's a couple pieces he talked about just in sharing on the wildfire mitigation project. And so folks don't know, they're doing a significant amount of work. There's a lot of partners that are up there helping, and they've got about half the residential properties in the town on board on that project. And it's who the commissioners were out with National Fire Service, some national folks, state folks, and local partners involved in wildfire mitigation, looking at both Howe Valley Ranch. We were there in the morning, and then the group went on to Jamestown in the afternoon to take a look at aerial mulching, to look at where the recovery is, which is really fascinating for anybody who has an opportunity to go up there and see what aerial mulching was able to do for us in Boulder County. When we talked with some of our neighbors in Lamar County, Cameron Peak Fire and others who weren't able to get aerial mulching in sooner and really had significant damage to their sediment and the erosion, et cetera, et cetera. So that was another piece that he had put on his bullet point, because that group did get a chance to go up to Jamestown in the afternoon on Monday. There's also work with the Watershed Center and St. Vrain Left Hand Partners to try to ensure that forested areas around populated mountain areas are addressed in the USFS mitigation plan, which is work. Friday we were in a Fireshed meeting with a huge group of folks who are all working around the region. And someone talked about, and I apologize, I can't remember who it was now, talked about the CWPP, which will really open some opportunities leveraging funding as legislation opens up, as federal monies open up, for us to be able to do some more work around the county, but also that we'll be able to touch into wildfire mitigation work along the plains as well. Another point he sent was that we were working with the Intermountain Alliance, the IMA, and the BC Boulder County ODM on programs that might prepare Office of Disaster Management on programs that might prepare residents for emergencies and evacuation, and the Train the Trainer program that's happening with the Office of Disaster Management. Another bullet point, we've partnered with US Solar with a program that permits Excel customers to subscribe to out-of-town solar gardens. So if that's something that y'all are interested, or folks have more questions about, that would be something to reach out to Ken. And maybe, Mark, if you don't mind putting Ken's contact information there. And then the last bullet point he shared was, we've suspended the practice of burning slash and yard waste in favor of collecting yard waste and compostable slash and transporting it for composting. So those are some of the highlights around climate resiliency that are happening in Jamestown. So again, if folks have questions or want to reach out to Ken, I know he'd be thrilled to collaborate and hear and share information as well. So thank you. So here's where it's 7:40 and we are going to take a quick 5-minute break. So folks can do whatever you need to do, or just even if it's stretch out. And the rest of the agenda this evening, our next topic when we come back, we'll have Boulder County staff. We're going to talk about the community input process for annual open space and trails requests. We'll hear an update, I'm guessing, just let me know, yeah, an update on the regional local wage and that work, any updates that folks have. And then we do, like I said, we do want to talk about having an in-person meeting maybe in December. So we'll go until 7:46. You'll hear my voice come back on, take a quick break and a stretch, and we appreciate it. And we'll be back. All right, everybody, we'll have about 1 minute just to give you a time check. We'll start at 7:46. All right. Mark, I'll just want to confirm with you that, oh, it looks like we are still recording. I was thinking maybe if we'd stopped for a second, so it's okay. We can.
That would have been the smart thing to do, yes.
No, that's you. I just assumed because we always do, and you are always on it, so I'm not worried. So we'll just go ahead and start because folks can be listening as well, even if we don't see folks on camera, and that's great. So I want to introduce Jeff and Tina with Boulder County, and who are going to do a presentation on community input process for annual open space and trails requests. So take it away, and there'll be some time for questions as well.
Great. So hi, everybody. Tina Nielsen here. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see the screen now? Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for that thumbs up, Mark. So this is a fairly quick PowerPoint, and we really just want to give you an overview of this process that we've been going through for many years now. In fact, for 30 years, when our first open space sales tax referendum was passed, it included a clause that said that the county commissioners will annually consult with city councils of all the basically all the annexed communities within Boulder County to solicit input on open space acquisitions and trail projects, so that we can, because it is a county-wide sales tax, and so that we can make sure that we're representing the broader goals of the communities within the county. And so every single sales tax that we have passed since that time has had that clause in it. And I just realized I'm not actually showing the slideshow, so I'm gonna, there we go, I'll do that. So anyhow, so that maybe is a little bit bigger. You can maybe read it a little easier. Great. So so let me first talk a little bit about open space acquisition. We do, in addition to the language in the referendum, and all of them that have passed since that initial one passed in 1993, we also have strategic guidance from the Board of County Commissioners strategic priorities. There's goal 2 is a land and water stewardship goal, and objective 1A addresses, targeted and strategic acquisition that should be reflected in our acquisition strategy. So we have also obviously other tools that we rely on, the IGAs that we have with most of the communities within the county, and the super IGA that establish urban growth boundaries and rural preservation areas. We have shared goals in those rural preservation areas. We just as a policy, we always work with willing sellers. We are always interested in sharing costs on open space acquisitions where it makes sense, and we have done a number of those. I'll show you a map here shortly. And then we have, as part of that cost sharing, we often have mutual conservation easements that are, add double protection to jointly acquired properties. That's something that's required if we get, for example, if we get a GOCO grant that helps support an acquisition, but it's also a tool we use just to give that extra layer of protection. And then we have management agreements. When we have those joint acquisitions, we usually create an IGA that specifies which agency will have the management responsibilities ongoing for that project or that property. So just a few examples. It wouldn't be an open space presentation without some maps and photos. So I wanted to just highlight some of those joint acquisitions that have been done throughout the county. And I apologize, we didn't include an Erie example on this map here, but so we have just the red in the map here. I'm sorry, Ari. The red in the map here just is highlighting some of those jointly acquired properties. So Mayhofer Farm, with Boulder County, Lewisville, and Lafayette. Then the McLaughlin property, which is up by Clover Basin, that was with Longmont. Down here, back again in the Lewisville, Lafayette area, is the Warrenburg property that was jointly purchased with Lewisville. And then the Wanacre Centennial Farm with Lafayette, Century Link property with Superior, Beach property with Boulder, and the Olson property it wasn't jointly purchased, but it was a request of the Superior community. So again, I just wanted to, give some examples. This is not a comprehensive list by any means. So of course I need to show you a few pictures of these same properties. So I'll just kind of go through them. They're not quite in the same order that they showed on the map here, but obviously you can see most of them are on the, adjacent to the urban boundaries, which is kind of how it makes the most sense. And again, here, this is by Clover Basin Reservoir, that property with Longmont. And then the beach property off of 36, heading up towards Lyons from Boulder. So, with the open space properties, we feel like the process works pretty well, and it's pretty straightforward. We have great working relationships with all the communities, and so we're not really too concerned about how this process has worked. The trail guidance is something that we are looking to maybe review and see if we can improve. So again, guidance comes both from the language that's in the referenda, all of the referenda that have passed since 1993. We also have guidance from the Boulder County Commissioner's strategic priorities regarding land and water stewardship, and in particular with regard to trails. Our direction is to collaborate with the Transportation Department, which is it's now under Public Works. But anyway, it's the department that does the trail planning, the regional trail planning, as well as coordinating and collaborating with municipalities so that we create more connectivity with municipal neighborhoods and local open spaces. So that's definitely one of our guiding principles in looking at trails requests annually. And of course, we do have many examples of successes. So the Lobo Trail and the IBM connector between Longmont and Boulder, the Coal Creek Rock Creek Regional Trail that connects from Superior to Lewisville, Lafayette, and Erie, the 104th Street Trail, which is currently in the process of being, I think construction will be starting very soon, and it's a collaboration between Lafayette, Lewisville, and Boulder County. The Picture Rock Trail, which is on the Ohio Valley Ranch property near Lyons, the Patasso Link, which is on the Patasso Preserve property west of Boulder at Boulder Canyon. Of course, the Boulder Canyon Extension and the Colton Trail, Superior Boulder, and also connecting to City of Boulder. And Erie, this is for you, coming soon. We have the Kenosha management plan process, which will be rolling out early next year. It'll be a huge community co-creation and envisioning process that we're really excited to be rolling out an updated process for creating a management plan. The co-creating and collaboration piece is extremely important to us, and so you'll be hearing more about that. I don't know if it's been formally announced yet, so this may be the first time you've heard about it. So you heard it here.
No, I appreciate that, Tina. We're looking forward to it.
Great. So again, just some of these on a map just to highlight where they are. That previous map. Here, I'm gonna go back here, showing the Coal Creek Rock Creek Trail system and some of those connection points that have been requested and built out. This is the IBM connector in the circle there, which connects to the Lobo Trail in the area of Coot Lake and the Boulder Reservoir. And then this is showing Boulder Canyon, and you can see the Patasso Link property that comes off of Boulder Canyon Drive as, okay, so that's that on that map. So what we've observed is that the trail request process, as opposed to the property acquisition process, we know that with open space properties, we're always waiting for that willing seller, and it's not always a direct line from A to Z to get a property done. So the timing can be, can be drawn out. It can be very quick. With the trail request, the timing can also be very drawn out, but for a whole slew of different reasons. And that is just having to do with all of the projects that we have on our capital improvements plan, and how much these projects typically cost, all the planning that has to happen. So some of those projects that you saw may have been on the list for, well, for example, 104th Street was probably on the request list for close to 10 years before it actually got on the capital improvement plan. And although Boulder County is contributing funding to it, the city of Lewisville is the one who's leading that project. So a lot of pieces have to fall into place before a project is really ready for prime time. So we're just thinking that we would like to kind of, on a staff level, do some brainstorming and figure out how we can make this process a little bit more responsive to all the communities, and not have this long laundry list that just kind of seems like it hangs out there for years and years and years. So we have a few ideas about how to do that, but I don't really want to get into the weeds on those right now this evening. Really, all we want to do tonight is just kind of get this on your radar, and hear any ideas or questions that you might have about this, and then kind of get your blessing to move ahead and speak on a staff level with the staffs of each of your communities to do some brainstorming and come back, hopefully in sometime in early part of next year, the first quarter of next year, to give you some recommendations about how we might tweak this process so that it continues to be meaningful. So I don't know, Jeff, I did all the talking there. Do you want to add anything?
That was great. No, that was great, Tina. I think you're exactly, I mean, I'm of course in total agreement. And I think the one thing that we've really realized is that with respect to the trail requests, I think it's really going to be helpful for us to discuss, kind of have a discussion with the municipal staff about those, so that we can kind of think of those together before we kind of make a list. What's happened in the past is, as Tina indicated, we've gotten kind of a list from the municipalities of their requests, and then we've kind of gone through them, and so it's sort of been this back and forth. And I think we've really realized that it's going to be a much powerful and more responsive process if we just kind of have some discussions with the staff and work through, what would be the highest priorities and which would those be and why would those be. I think that'll just lead to a better, it'll meet those goals that you have on the slide there, streamlining the process, and we'll be more responsive to the request. So no, I think you covered it, Tina. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so we'd welcome any thoughts or questions that you might have.
Thanks, Jeff and Tina. Appreciate that. Any questions? Looks like Mayor Pro Tem Farrell.
Yes, thank you. I was just curious. So I guess I'm not exactly clear. Are you asking for municipalities to reach out to you, or will you be reaching out to the municipalities at a certain point? What maybe I should communicate back to my town?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for that, Mayor Pro Tem. We will initiate conversations with each of we have very good working relationships at the staff level, so we'll be reaching out and initiating those conversations, just trying to be more proactive, as Jeff mentioned. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Megan?
Thank you. Tina, Jeff, thanks so much for the presentation. And I think this sounds like a great approach to having a little bit more dialogue with each of the communities. And I know
like with our OSAB, you know, our OSAB board in Lewisville, at least, it's always just kind of a wonky process with their priorities and then our priorities and then getting to the county. So I think this will be great to have a little streamline. One question, you might have answered this in the beginning and I missed it, but what's the schedule for the county open space taxes? Is there anything coming up, or can you tell me a little bit more about that?
You mean in terms of re-upping the sales taxes?
Yeah.
That would be a commissioner decision. So I don't know if, I'm not up on any conversations that are ongoing.
Are they are any of them expiring soon?
Oh, if that's the question.
Yes.
Yes, we have one. So we have a couple that are active now. I'm sorry, I don't have those exact dates right at the tip of my fingers. I could pull it up on the web, but it might take me just a minute. There's one that goes through the 2020s for sure. So we've got some, and then we have a very small amount that is in perpetuity for open space maintenance and management. Yeah.
Okay. I just asked because ours is going to be up. We're going to be likely going to the voters next year, and so I think that this is helpful timing for us. I think in having a better sense of our potential collaborative opportunities moving forward as well. So thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to shout out, Megan, thanks for your support on one of these joint projects, the 104th Street Trail. So Lewisville, that's been a great partnership. So
It's been great. I'm really glad we're getting that moving, and Lafayette's been a great partner too. So thanks for all your work on that, Jeff.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jeff and Tina? I just have one just for our awareness as members of the consortium. I heard coming back to us in the spring, do you have an idea right now about how much time you'd want to allocate so that folks could be there, and we'll make sure that we let folks know ahead of time what meeting you'll be attending to participate?
At the moment, I would just be making a guess, but I would guess an hour would be plenty of time.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's helpful just for us to be aware. And Mark, go ahead.
Thanks. I just happen to be part of another conversation about sales taxes, and I have this really great chart of all the county sales taxes. So here's the answer to Megan's question. There are 3 open space taxes currently in play. The first one expires at the end of 24. The second at the end of 2029. Actually 2. So end of 2024 and the end of 2029.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like there's additional questions right now, but I would encourage you, Tina and Jeff, to put your contact information in the chat if you haven't, in case folks want to reach out.
Sure.
Thanks for staying late this evening as well with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's see here. This is our chance. So it's 8:04. We'll be done before 8:30. Want to give folks an opportunity to share any updates around what they have. But first, I'd like to hear from Councilmember Folkerts on the update on livable wage, just so we don't get cut off in time. So if you can give us just a brief update so that we can move into that other portion, would be great.
Yeah, sure. So we had a great little information session. I think it might have been 2 weeks ago now. And I think that brought a lot of great information about how to move this forward from the legal perspective and in coordination with the state and all of that under the new laws. Oh, I see Devin popping up. Maybe he could take over some of this too. Devin, you want to jump in?
Sure, I can jump in. Well, we had a great presentation a couple of weeks ago on September 21st, and we had a good number of people that actually showed up on the night of. I think that we had about 30 people or so that were in attendance. We were also competing that night with a good number of other meetings. There was an important Dr. Cog meeting that same night, so there was a lot of people that weren't able to attend, but they are looking forward to seeing the presentation recording that will come out hopefully fairly soon. We had some great questions that were asked that night as well, in terms of just kind of the logistics, in terms of why the law came to be, what's allowed under the law. And so there was some really great questions. And so we'll continue to follow up on what those answers are. But I think that we answered every question that came to us that night. So we definitely got some good questions, and then we're looking to follow up. So I'll hand it back over to Lauren.
Yeah, and it looks like Mark just posted a link in the chat to the consortium website, which has the video. Thank you so much from that meeting. So that's great. We can, if anyone missed it, I highly recommend zooming through it there. I did send out a doodle poll for our next consortium meeting a while back and didn't get a bunch of responses. So hopefully anyone who's part of the working group, keep your eyes out. I'm going to send out another new doodle poll in the next day or so, so that we can kind of get a wrap up, meeting to discuss how the last presentation went and talk about next steps for moving forward.
Great. Thank you both. I was sorry to not be able to join in on that meeting. So it sounds like there was other folks dealing with schedules, not just myself. So that link is great. Thanks, Mark, for folks who want to take a look at that, or you want to just share it even with your own councils who are talking about livable wage. That would be a great resource, just so folks also know what's happening at the consortium in regards to that topic. So thank you, everybody. So let's go around. If anybody has updates, events they want to share about, this would be a great time to do that. Go ahead, Trustee Harrison.
Thank you. So now that we've had a couple of months under our belt with the new version of our board, we started to set up meetings with our partners and our neighbors. So we had a joint meeting with the city of Lafayette a couple of weeks ago. That was very well attended from the perspectives of both of our boards. And we talked a lot about some commonalities of things that we need to discuss in regard to affordable housing, transit, etc. And we did the same thing with Boulder County commissioners on Monday. And we had a chance to meet everybody in person for the first time, which was great. And I sat next to Marta and I didn't spill anything on her, so that was good. So I got through it all right. But no, I think the big thing was on the transit side was what are we going to do with Highway 7 and going from Lyman all the way, I think it's Lyman, all the way out to Boulder, and what's that's going to look like, and the visioning of that, and we now have our transportation planner. We've hired our first transportation planner in Erie, Carlos Hernandez, and I'm having a meeting with him as well as our town administrator and assistant town administrator tomorrow to discuss transit and affordable housing and other things in that area. So that's what's ongoing in Erie, but we look forward to setting up more meetings with our neighbors and try to see what we can do to work together on trying to get a lot of these issues kind of resolved in terms of what's going on in the world.
Great, thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Folkerts.
I just wanted to share sort of as community collaboration events, the Colorado Green Building Guild is doing a builders workshop and green building product expo October 15th. And specifically, it's going to be focusing on some of the Excel energy rebates and things like that for the Marshall Fire rebuild. So if you know any builders or people in that realm, please make sure and send them that way.
Thank you. Councilmember Chef.
Thank you. So this isn't necessarily an event coming up, but I wanted to highlight it because this just happened just recently. So catalytic converter thefts are a big thing that has happened around the state. And Broomfield just hosted a kind of a, I guess what it was a way in which to reduce the amount of thefts. And, you know, we're just one of the cities that have done this. So we're marking those converters. And we had 200 slots that were opened online for residents to come and work with Broomfield PD as well as this contractor to do this. And those 200 slots filled up in 15 minutes. It was a very successful event that we had. I'm hoping that we do more because I think that, you know, there's going to be, you know, more interest. There is more interest in doing this. And so hopefully, you know, we'll be able to offer this again. But like I said, this just happened. It was a great event. And we're looking forward to seeing kind of what the results are from this. If any of those converters do get stolen, what that looks like.
Wow, thank you. Anyone else have any? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you. This was super valuable. I'm working on the comprehensive plan and we're getting towards the end. Hopefully in the next 3 months, we'll have it all wrapped up. But you all have brought up so many things that I'm like, oh my God, I need to add that. So this was really useful. So thank you very much.
I'm glad to hear that. That's why we move this to working meetings, working group, share of information. So that's great feedback. Mark?
Thanks, both. I was just going to say, if there's any way I can help connect Mayor Pro Tem, you or your staff, to our staff, City of Boulder staff, or any of the communities, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm sure, can't speak for all the jurisdictions, but generally speaking, the staff are usually more than happy to share information and spread the good word. So just reach out if we can be of assistance.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good. Well, I feel like it'd be remiss if I didn't at least note that we do have 3 Boulder County ballot measures that you'll be seeing on your November ballot, because we won't see each other before November. So instead of giving you the commercial for each one of those, I just want to offer that if anybody does have questions about 1A, 1B, or 1C, that's transportation, wildfire mitigation, and emergency services, just to reach out to me, because a staff cannot work on campaign ballot measures. So I just want to clarify that as well. And I know folks have their locals as well, but just want to make sure that if you're having folks with questions, they can be directed straight to me as well.
Do we know when the ballots are going to be sent out?
October 17th is what I've heard that they'll be mailed out. Yeah, so it's coming up. And then of course, election is November 8th.
Okay, yep. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Well, we can, I think that the last item was just to throw around the idea of December will be our next meeting, and if we want to do that in person. And I also, just talking about scheduling and agendas, I do want to just acknowledge and recognize I was remiss in calendar planning. Today is Yom Kippur, and I know there's folks that recognize and are participating, and I completely missed that. And so that's a topic that we're going to be working on at the county. And there's other county meetings happening this evening. And so that's a great learning experience for me to figure out how I can support that work at the just in calendars period for us at the county and have that conversation. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I think we could just do a quick vote quorum if folks are wanting to do an in-person. If people would feel comfortable, we can always do a hybrid as well and just use a room at the county. We're talking about county courthouse for a December meeting, so you can do a raise of hands, or if somebody has something specific that you want to share about, yes or no, please do right now. That would be great for us planning.
I can't speak for Mayor Rogan because I know this is something that she normally attends, but I'll certainly ask her. She does like being in person in town hall here, so my guess is going to be a yes.
Okay, so a maybe yes vote. Leaning towards yes vote, and I saw Eric's note in the chat. Happy to meet in person. Councilmember Folkerts.
So that is, sorry, just to clarify, that would be in person at the Boulder County Courthouse? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And that looks like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, it's been a while since we've all gotten together. It'd be great to see you all in the same room.
Yeah, I feel it would be our first consortium meeting in person since I joined in January 2021. So that would be exciting. I saw Trustee Harrison said yes in the chat. So I think we have a quorum and we've got a thumbs up, which really puts us at a full votes of yes. So we'll plan on that, and we're looking at space, and Mark will just include that room, but we'll plan to meet at the Boulder County Courthouse, and we'll give you more information on which room and access for that. So our next meeting will be in December, and of course in person, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And we'll get the date and the room location for you. And again, we'll do a hybrid option. So if you're unable to make it or somebody is unable to make it, we'll make that. So I'm gonna check my agenda, but I think we got through everything. Yeah. Good. Well, this is exciting. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate all the work. Stay in contact, reach out to Mark if there's somebody that you think, oh yeah, you know what, I forgot, I should have asked that question. Allow Boulder County to be a resource for all of you. And this is, like I said, one of my favorite meetings. Again, thanks to the staff. So if folks can give a shout out to the people that were helping with presentations, either preparing and or just here this evening presenting. It's really important for us to acknowledge and recognize all that work because they make us look good as electeds for sure. So thanks again, Mark, for your work. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.